Every single client I deal with has to keep an awareness journal. It is probably, the initial resistance for some is pretty high, but it's the most telltale sign about what's working and what's not working. So I'm going to teach you how to keep an awareness journal. And if you're someone who's by nature a strong journaler, you're going to like this because I'm going to be very specific as to what to journal. If you're someone who's abhorred journaling, you don't like writing or whatever, it's 4 sentences, a minimum per day. But the return on investment's tremendous. So I'm going to walk you through what an awareness journal looks like, detailed, step by step. So you can see there's 4 components. Number 1 is IQ. What did you learn? A data point. Number 2, it's what did you notice? Number 3, it's advocate. How did you take care of yourself? Number 4, it's gratitude. What are you grateful for? But now I'm going to go into detail with you. The purpose of keeping an awareness journal is to increase your self-awareness, expand your understanding of your container, which is your foxhole, and discover behavior patterns. You want to track false narratives and cognitive distortions, and you want to increase your capacity to go from first half of life to second half of life. So as I mentioned before, when your awareness is raised, you see the invisible, you hear the unheard, and you understand the incomprehensible. Because if you don't understand, see, or hear what's there, they are going to control you. And they probably have been controlling you for a long time. Researchers have found that when one writes down their observations or their awarenesses, and they process the why of things that happen without venting or complaining, they heal. So in different words, your journal isn't to write about what happened and what went wrong. That will do you no good. You might as well call up your neighbor or go down a list of contacts and vent to everyone, because that's what some people think is healthy. That is another addiction. You're basically creating more opioids on the inside. An awareness journal is to process what happened, to understand the why of what happened, not just to complain or vent about it. Your goal is to create a second half of life environment that's based on principles, and it's going to be created by your best self. Well, you have to know your best self. You have to know your authentic self in order to discover and practice who you really are. The awareness journal is designed to give you markers along the pathway of growth. You look for patterns. So if you're seeing me, if you're a normal, regular client of mine, you're going to send me your awareness journal once a week. And this is going to be part of your homework assignment here. Someone, myself probably, or my wife, we're going to be monitoring that. We're going to look for patterns. I want to see what's happening. What are you seeing? What are you noticing? What are you learning? Because if it's very surfacey and you're not growing, you're not moving anywhere, or you miss the patterns, that's exactly why we're keeping the awareness journal. So you can learn, so you can grow from that. It's designed to give you the ability to see what you're missing. Remember, when you see what's there, if you don't see what's there, it's going to control you. So we're going to break it down now. Number 1 is a data point. It's IQ based. In this category, you are practicing being a lifelong learner. There are 2 aspects of knowledge. The first is a new data point to your existing body of knowledge. And the second is the more powerful of the 2. It's the application of said knowledge. Remember, knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Many people know what to do, but they fail in their efforts to apply their alleged knowledge. So we've covered that a little bit, so I'm going to give you examples. In this category, the entry usually starts by simply adding a data point of knowledge. For example, I learned about non-insulin meds for diabetes. This was an RN student. I learned about girls lacrosse. I learned that some insurance policies cover having a gas can brought to you if you run out of gas. I learned about the operational logistics of our risk investment strategy. I learned how to throw an axe properly. I learned how to make soda bread. Those are examples of an initial entry level for IQ. As you mature, this is what I'm looking for. Your data points are designed to be neural path deepeners. I learned how to de-escalate my teenager through the connect and redirect process. I learned how to keep neutrality in conversation with my in-laws. Wouldn't you like to learn that? I learned how to negotiate using Jedi mind magic. I learned how to create trust and respect with my prospects before business is conducted. I learned how to deepen my love, emotional intimacy with my spouse by holding trust and respect conversations in our dates. Those are powerful next level data points based on IQ. The bullet points above indicate the beginnings of neural pathways that are habits developed through deliberate practice. Each bullet point is the result of many experiences noticed in the emotional intelligence section. So notice how they're springboarding or connected to each other. So for example, I would write, I notice that when I'm neutral with my teenager and refrain from unsolicited opinions, she's more open with me. Now that's a notice, that's an emotional intelligence. Then you can move to, I noticed how to de-escalate, or I learned how to de-escalate my teenager through the connect and redirect process. Okay, now into the emotional intelligence section. Here you're going to focus on creating your self-awareness of words, behaviors, body language, intentions, underground truths, false narratives, cognitive distortions, empathy listening, neutral questions, and safe space. So that's the idea. I usually start this by recommending you go to your rules of engagement and take the big four, the top four. So criticism, sarcasm, judging, and relating. So pay attention to those in conversations. So step 1, observe conversations and notice what's going on by giving the behavior or trait a name. Don't judge the person, only give a name. So for example, I notice that when my supervisor does drive-by criticisms, it dampens the energy in the person he or she criticizes. It's a notice, but what I want you to pay attention to is we're not trying to throw the supervisor under the bus. We're just trying to give a name to a behavior. Another one. I noticed that constructive criticism isn't constructive. I noticed that everyone was relating and one-upping during the company social. I noticed that Bill is usually in the me pyramid. Remember, that's where you treat them as objects, trying to get everyone to agree that he's right. And then finally, I noticed that Sally is very manipulative and leading with her questions. Those are observations. The reason that they're all about someone else as a general rule is because it's easier to see other people's maladaptive behavior. But once you do, and I've noticed this happen thousands of times, then you can start seeing where you are doing the same thing. It's very common for people to come back and go, oh, first I really hated my mom or really hated my sister when she did X and Y and Z. And then I realized I'm doing the exact same thing they are. Okay, step 2, and that's where we're going. Observe the behavior in yourself. I notice that when I relate, it shuts down the other person. Wow, that's powerful. I noticed that when I'm quick to solve a problem, it frustrates my wife or my coworker or my children. I noticed that when I listen to understand instead of solving, the other person can often find a solution. Now, the next level would be, I noticed, or I learned how to do that. So you've got your emotional intelligence notice, and it can actually move to an applied knowledge. That's a growth mindset. That's lifelong learning. I noticed that when I ask questions before I give my opinion, I often find that I didn't fully understand the situation in the first place. Wow, that's big. Step 3, observe the body language and the energy in the conversations when someone engages in unsolicited behaviors that are maladaptive. Examples, and this came from a client of mine who really got into the spirit of this. I noticed how easy it is to make simple, quick judgments about patients and their families that are completely off base. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Now, I did have a conversation with her after this. Fascinating conversation. I'm aware of how my kids react when I discipline calm versus discipline elevated. I notice that adults complain as much as children and with no shame. That was pretty good. I noticed my tendency to feel in crises and view things out of proportion when stressed. And then this is cool because this was the follow-up. It was the next week or the next day. I noticed how quickly my emotions change from frustration to calm when I take a moment to be grateful. All right, so we've got the first two, IQ, EQ. Now we're going to do advocate. It's a well understood belief that happiness comes from being in the service of another person or in others. While I support the principle, how it is taught is not in harmony with practice success. For example, if happiness and joy are derived from serving others, it is important to have the ability and the fortitude to actually be in the service of others. Therefore, if one is hampered with self-inflicted poor health, chronic illness, obesity, addictions, that person struggles to serve others. And at some point, they will be the one who ends up being served. For this reason, it's important to learn the habit of prioritizing oneself with the purpose of serving others. Let me put it in different terms. Remember, you have to find yourself, then lose yourself. If you haven't found yourself, you can't lose yourself. By prioritizing you first, you better position yourself to serve other people. That's the purpose of this part of it. How are you advocating for you? Are you getting sufficient sleep? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? So when we get going, I don't focus on eating and I don't focus on exercising. That comes a little bit more mature into the process, especially when we start working on the gut microbiome. For purposes of just getting going, we're only focusing on sleep, very narrowly focused. We know we need 8 to 9 hours of sleep. The national average is 8.6, so 8 to 9. Inside of the foxhole that you'll get a part of this protocol is a sacred hour. How do you prepare yourself to go to bed? So we understand that in order for us to get good rest, you actually have to pre-plan how you're going to do it. Now, moving from sleep to diet, that's the same idea. Anyone who goes on a diet is guaranteeing they're going to gain weight. We don't go on diets. We change our diets. So again, we pre-plan being healthy, and then lastly, we pre-plan exercise. Then the last one is gratitude. It's almost self-explanatory, but let's just cover it a little bit. Gratitude is the thing that you have, is what you felt the last thing of the day. Examples. I am grateful for our children and for a husband who shows my 3 girls how they should be treated. Just by way of disclosure, blended family. I'm grateful for music and talented people. I'm grateful for technology and the ability to see my niece. Awareness journal. IQ, 2 levels. EQ, noticing it, 3 levels. Advocate, 3 things. Sleep, diet, exercise, and then gratitude. Be mindful of those. Thanks so much for listening.